Hi everyone! 3 days ago I turned 15, and my grandma gave me a very special and incredible gift. She transferred ownership of her penthouse apartment to me. Grandma doesn't actually live there. She has a house in the suburbs. But she's owned this apartment for a couple of years and sometimes stays there when she comes into the city. I was over the moon because this past year had been absolutely awful for me. First, my dad left our family. He was always a terrible workaholic and never found time for me or my mom, but even so, their breakup was a huge shock for me. Mom didn't even tell me until Dad quietly moved out almost a year ago. It turned out they had already filed for divorce by then. They decided they couldn't live together anymore because Dad was overwhelmed with everything. What exactly he was so overwhelmed with, no one ever explained to me. He didn't even say goodbye to me in person. After he moved out, he sent me one last message, and that was it. I never saw him again that soon. The divorce was finalized. Mom got the house and full custody of me and my little brother. Dad still technically had visitation rights, but he never used them, so I have no idea what he's doing now. And as if all that wasn't enough, about 2 months ago, Mom told me she had been dating a man for almost 3 months. Let's call him Robert. They were in love, and she didn't want to waste time. She said she wasn't getting any younger, so they got engaged. I barely had time to process that Mom had a new boyfriend, and suddenly she was announcing she was engaged and that this man would be my stepfather. It was too much. I was very unhappy because, in my opinion, 5 months isn't nearly enough to really know the person you're marrying. But she told me not to worry. A couple of weeks later, she introduced me to him. He seemed very closed off and cold with me. But with my little brother, he was completely different, playful and cheerful. At first, I thought it was just because my brother is only 4, and it's easier to fool around with a small child. But a few weeks later, Mom told me something that completely changed the way I saw both of them. She sat me down and explained that the reason they got engaged so quickly was because Robert had been offered a really good job, and he was planning to accept it. But that meant they would have to move to another state. They planned to leave me here with Grandma because Mom assumed I wouldn't want to leave my life behind. But I told her I didn't mind moving, as long as I could stay with her, since my dad had already abandoned me. I couldn't bear losing her too. She tried to convince me it was a bad idea, that my school and friends were here, and that I'd be better off staying. I insisted that I wanted to go with her, and then she just blurted out the truth. She wanted me to stay with Grandma because of Robert. He only wanted to take my little brother with him, since he was young enough that they could build a bond. But me? I was already too old, and I'd never become his real daughter. It turned out he didn't like that I had told Mom 5 months wasn't enough to get engaged to someone you barely knew. He thought I was still stuck in the past, clinging to Mom and Dad's marriage, and that I'd never accept him. And Mom agreed with him. So she wanted me to stay behind and deal with my own life. That was so painful to hear. Mom was supposed to be on my side, not abandon me just because Robert wanted her to. It wasn't that I didn't want to live with Grandma. She's wonderful and I love her very much. But I love my mom too, and losing her like that broke my heart. I argued with her, but eventually I realized it was useless. So I told her I wanted to move in with Grandma right away. A few days later, I packed up my things and left. Mom tried to reassure me she still loved me, but it was obvious she was only thinking about herself. I didn't even say goodbye to her when I moved out. The only person I hugged was my little brother because I knew I'd miss him terribly. Now I live with Grandma, and she has shown me nothing but love and compassion. She's Mom's mother, and she's incredible. Living with her has been easy because she truly cares about me. A few days ago, she even threw me a surprise birthday party, inviting some of my school friends and a few relatives. It lifted my spirits a little since I'd been feeling so down about Mom sending me away. But then came the biggest surprise of all, her gift. Grandma announced that she was giving me her penthouse apartment. For now, her lawyer would act as trustee, but when I turn 18, it would legally be mine. I couldn't believe it. It was the best news I'd had in so long, I didn't even think about telling Mom, but yesterday, I found out someone from the party had told her. She called me that night, furious, and after talking with Robert, she said he wanted to adopt me, but only if I convinced Grandma to transfer the property to him. She actually expected me to be happy about this, as if that was some wonderful deal. Instead, I told her I'd never do that, and that she didn't need to call me anymore. She messaged me afterward, apologizing and saying that Robert was the only one who had been there for her after the divorce, that he supported her emotionally and financially. Unlike Dad, she tried to justify everything, asking me to think about her happiness, and begged me to give Robert what he wanted so that we could all be together. At first, part of me almost softened, but then I realized how absurd it was. She had completely lost herself in him, and she expected me to do the same. So I told her no, that if she wanted to leave with Robert, she could, but I would stay with Grandma, just like she had planned all along. Grandma fully supported me. She said she would never sign over the penthouse to Robert, especially since she barely knew him and didn't trust him. She was sure he'd sell it instantly, and I'd never see a dime. Mom, of course, didn't take my refusal well. She even showed up at Grandma's house one morning with my brother, trying to pressure me again, but I stood my ground. I told her she wasn't trying to make everyone happy. She was only trying to make herself happy and forcing the rest of us to bend to her will. She cried and played the victim, but I couldn't take it anymore. I told her she was selfish, that both of my parents had abandoned me, and I wasn't going to sacrifice my life just to make hers easier. She left, and later I realized she had blocked me. Now I feel guilty. Did I go too far by telling my mom she's selfish and only cares about her own happiness?